Welcome to the Excellence at Work podcast, where we explore the strategies and best practices that drive business success. I'm Rachel Cook, COO of Brandon Hall Group and the host of our podcast, along with members of our executive team. In each episode, we'll dive into the latest trends, insights, and real-world examples from some of the most exciting leaders from organizations worldwide. Be part of our journey and learn from the best as we discuss innovative approaches and cutting-edge technologies for talent management, learning and development, leadership, diversity and inclusion, and more. Hi, I'm Rachel Cook, the COO of Brandon Hall Group and our host of Excellence at Work podcast. Today with me is Ashwin Raurath, the CEO of Gallant and co-founder and chairman of Reviture. Ashwin has been considered one of the leading employer of emerging technology talent in the U.S., where he built the training model that's prepared more than 10,000 software engineers for Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. He's also CEO of Gallant, an AI native digital engineering firm helping enterprises and global capability centers accelerate AI adoption. With more than 25 years in digital transformation and workforce strategy, Ashwin is a recognized voice on generative AI and the future of work, and hosts Gallant's Fourth Words Roundtable series for global executives. Welcome, Ashwin. How are you doing today?
Very good, Rachel. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a beautiful day here. I'm sure it's a beautiful day in Florida.
Yes.
Exciting times that we are in, and I'm really excited about this topic and really looking forward to the conversation.
And likewise, also wanted to highlight a few of your other achievements that you had been recognized by Brandon Hall Group and our team of judges from around the world through our Excellence Awards program, receiving 3 awards in 2025 around best competencies and skill development, best learning measurement, and best use of blended learning, 2 receiving a gold. And again, congratulations on those achievements. And I'm excited to connect with you today around our conversation that we're going to be talking about forward development engineers, the Formula One drivers of the AI era. And as we were preparing for our chat today, I had mentioned when I saw the topic you wanted to cover, I was so excited because it's something that is so needed around what companies are, we'll talk more about this, but the scarcity of talent around this typical role and how it continues to evolve and the demand for it. And then also it's similar to the theme that we're going to be introducing at our HCM Excellence Conference next year, January 26th through the 28th, which previously also Reviture was a sponsor and partner. And so we very enjoyed our relationship over the years and excited to be with you today around the topic that we're covering. And I can't wait to get your thoughts and perspectives and dive in deep here. But also, as I shared to our audience today about your background, and I know you have an interesting history and journey that led you here today. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Thank you, Rachel. I will for sure. First of all, thank you for all the recognition. And as we get into today's conversation, I have one business idea I want to give it to Brandon Hall. And you might say it's a bad idea, but I will still like to propose that. So, a quick background. As you mentioned, I'm fortunate enough to be the founder of Reviture because like if you see our business model, like we enable talented young adults into becoming a very successful tech career as a developers, analyst, or whatever it may be, right? So I always felt this, right? Like I think Reviture is not only a great business, but it also does a great service. I don't think so I will get a satisfaction in running any business like Reviture because not only it's a good business model, you're also enabling jobs for people, right? So now coming to a quick background, I started my career as a technologist. Interestingly, my first AI project was in 2001 and it is still in use. So when ChatGPT research version came in 2022, I was very, very curious about like what this is new about. Like being attached to AI, I was curious about it. By then, I have already had a successful exit and sold Reviture. And this AI really, really brought me curiosity and I want to jump back into the entrepreneurship world. So I acquired an AI native company called Gallant, and I started running it. And as I was going through that journey, they were doing phenomenal outcome, and we found there is a certain kind of engineers. They are the one who are doing really magical performance in getting jobs done in production, and they are forward deployed engineers. And we were struggling to hire them. We were struggling to find them. And that is what I thought Revature can play a massive role in this new talent scarcity AI is creating. Because what does Revature do? Enable talent in new field. So interestingly, I came a whole circle back as of April 2026. I acquired Revature back from the company that I sold. Now I'm enabling FDEs for Revature.
Fascinating. I think it's so unique too, coming back to the company that you started, and especially with your experience and being able to have this, I feel, laser focused, kind of like the topic we're talking about with F1, how precise and how developers really need, or engineers really need to think about the work that they're creating. And so from your perspective, the term forward development engineer, which is kind of new, I think, to at least HR and learning, maybe not to tech or engineering, but to HR and in that, I feel, in that environment. How would you describe the role of a SHRO or talent leader who hasn't encountered it yet, or what, how can you help them understand this better and be prepared for it?
Absolutely. So I will give you a headline first and then probably dive a little bit detail into it, right? So what AI has done in many areas is, and we are going to focus on software, it has flattened a lot of roles that is required for software development and consolidated them into one. That is forward deployed engineer in essence, right? So what does that mean? Probably there are like 100 human beings in the world who can program better than a large language model. That's it. But we have 30 million programmers worldwide. So if AI can do the coding, how can the software get built, and what are the engineers going to do? So that's where the forward deployed engineers comes into play, right? So you have implementation, that's the coding phase. But for you to get a software, you need to do pre-implementation phase, like creating a business solution, finding the right features for the problem that you're trying to solve, architecting it, designing it. There are a lot of pre-implementation work needs to be done. Then coding comes in implementation. AI will do that. Then post-implementation work, which is how do you deploy that into production? How do you maintain it? How do you support it? So the whole software development journey has implementation, which is coding, pre-implementation work, and post-implementation work. A forward deployed engineer is capable of doing all three end to end. They focus on outcome. They focus on business outcome. They just not only focus just on coding, they work with the business to find what they want, solution it, architect it, get the implementation done, deploy in production, and maintain it. So all these roles got flattened, got consolidated into one outcome-based model that forward deployed engineers. So I hope this makes sense actually.
Absolutely. And I think it helps kind of streamline it a little bit and break it down for why we're focusing on it. And as AI is changing so rapidly in the nature of software development at such a speed, in your view, how is AI specifically accelerating the shift away from the traditional feature-focused developer towards someone who's accountable for end-to-end outcomes?
Good point, right? So the current developers, like in a pre-AI world, the standard way in which they are assigned a coding task is there is a ticket. For example, there's a Jira ticket that has a user story, and they see that and they start development, right? Like they don't think much on why this user story was created, what is it solving for the person who's going to try use the software. None of those things gets into it, right? On the other hand, a forward deployment engineer first thinks about outcome rather than straight away starting the coding. Thinks about outcome. Why are they asking this? Is it the right solution? Do we have the right solution? What is going to be the outcome? What is going to be the benefit of it? They think through the whole ecosystem, the whole equation, before they start worrying about the implementation and coding. So by doing this, you are not just doing a coder waiting for requirements to come through after months and months of requirement generation and waiting for the coding to get into product after several months of coding has been done. Since you're doing the whole equation, you can condense everything, getting the business future, deciding on the outcome, implementation it, and getting into production all happens in one giant step rather than happening in multiple different steps and multiple phases. So this is an acceleration where like no other. For example, there are some critical tasks that normally take 6 months to get it done. A forward deployed engineer with the right future and right thing can get it done in, I'm not joking, it's in 1 week from end to end, getting the business future and deploying in production. That is how big of a catalyst and accelerant a forward deployed engineer can be. Okay. And we talked about this, you mentioned this briefly. But if AI is like an F1 car, you need an F1 driver to do. That's how the combination. I also use a different term. Forward deployed engineer is like a centaur. It's half animal and half human. The animal piece can be the AI piece, and the human piece can be the human piece. So that's what an FDE stands for.
So do you envision this type of function or role as an engineer? Is it both an actual human, or what is the, I guess, what would you consider the ratio, or what do you see the ratio being going forward, maybe in the next 2 years, and then perhaps even more forward thinking 5 years, if that's even possible, because we know the rate of change is happening so fast.
Brilliant question, Rachel. I think everybody should be thinking in that line.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. We will reach a stage, at least in the software field, at least for the next few decades, that AI can do the entire software development end to end, because we are doing it for human being. The human has to be there, right? So ideally, anything that we do, not just for software development, any white collar jobs, will be divided into 4 categories. Category 1, things that can be fully automated by AI. Okay. Category 2, that is done by AI, but a human being validates it. So that's called human in the loop. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You trust AI enough to create it, but don't trust it fully enough that you need a human being to validate it. Yeah, in the loop. The third category is, this is much more critical. You need a human touch. That's where you come in. Human being creates it and AI validates it.
Mm-hmm.
That's called human in the lead. Okay. And the final category is, this is very critical. AI is not there yet. I want it to be end to end done by human beings. That's the fourth bucket. So you have 4 different buckets: fully done by AI, validated by human beings, done by human, validated by AI, and fully done by human beings. So this is what it happens. Depending on the task that you do, things can vary. For example, in software, as typical coding, I can say roughly 80% can be done by AI and 20% by human beings, and 20% validated by it. On the other hand, creating architecture and design, I think it has to be done by human beings. It can be done 100% by human beings. So depending on the criticality of the task that you're doing, the percentage can vary actually.
And this kind of reminds me of when we introduced learning or learning creation for off the shelf, built in house, technology enabled. What things do you really need? And there were four quadrants for it, right? And you organized different ways of thinking about it based on what was necessary in your environment that required more customization and not off the shelf. So as we're thinking kind of about the evolution here, right, and how technology is evolving and where AI sits in, there's a lot of, I think, parallels, wouldn't you say, with the industry, and if you look at the past and the future and how important the human element is and will continue to be, it's just going to shift the role of what they will be doing.
Exactly right, Rachel. You precisely got it right. I think the basic concepts remains the same,
Mm-hmm.
but the quantum of how that's happening, like with a combination of AI and human, that is what is going to be changing. But the basic concept will remain the same actually.
And you talked a little bit about the traditional developer and a forward deployment engineer, and side by side. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what that difference will actually look like, or actually looks like?
So I told you that I'm going to give you a business idea, right? So when I was thinking about this podcast, Brandon Hall, you're doing a phenomenal job in getting everybody together, recognition and everything. But that led me to think, you have built a massive IP of this knowledge. People submitting what they did, you judging them, what you think is fantastic, what you think is brilliant, all those intelligence, you have it as data in your system. Why can't you sell that intelligence as a service for people to figure out, like not disclosing any confidentiality, anything, unless getting the metadata and selling the intelligence as a service? Let's assume that, Rachel, like you convinced your management to build that software, right? Who would you prefer? Like somebody who'll sit with you, get a 30 minutes conversation from your idea, who can get that, conceptualize that, business solution it, show you a proof of concept, get your feedback, make those changes, and get the whole software done and deployed, let's say in less than 2 weeks, with 5 to 10 interactions with you. Okay. That's forward deployed engineers. On the other hand, a traditional engineer, you have to find a program manager to program manage the whole thing. You need to find an architect to do the whole thing. You need a requirements analyst to capture what you want, document the requirement, make you read like a 100-page document, get it validated, convert that into user stories, and then give it to a developer to do the coding. And multiple developers, they all have to bring it together. Just until it reaches that developer alone, it will take minimum 3 to 6 months time. That's the traditional developer. So when you have such great capability where you just interact with one or two people in 10 interactions, get it done in 15 days versus going through all the hassles and getting it done in 6 months or 12 months, by then your priorities might change. Who would you prefer? You're obviously going to go for a deployed engineer. That is such a massive difference. This is not a question of productivity. This is a question of enhanced capability. That is how I would like to compare. Do not compare for productivity enhancement. Compare for differentiated capability, which normal developers cannot provide.
Which is very true, and we deal with that, or have been, as our, not to mention the clients that we're seeing that are at this. We are too as well. We're always, we have massive amount of content and case studies and insights and data, and we've been experimenting a lot on, as you say, with how we can, distribute it in faster and more different types of ways to benchmark or to compare or to help, develop, HR and learning professionals so that they have the most relevant and timely information. So yeah, we understand what you're saying, and we do see, how it's shifting and how we had to spend, so much time to create a concept, and then, but also we still have to be careful of how this information is being shared, and what's shared, and then what, in what ways. So yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. By the way, if you start that intelligence product, I don't need a royalty, but just think of me if you do that.
We've have we do have, we have an eminence program, and we have our institute. So we need to have, we, like I said, it's great that we're connecting again, and I'm excited that you're the CEO of Revature, and we'll definitely have to have another conversation to see, and share with you what we're up to as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then, talking about talent scarcity, obviously FDEs is they're going to be increasingly on demand, but I'm sure difficult to hire and retain. What should learning or HR leaders consider, and how they can recruit and retain and engage this market?
See, I think first things first, HR leaders should realize this is a real problem. And if ability to recruit or enable forward deployed engineers is not solved, this is going to be one of a major crisis for the firm that you are part of, right? So understanding that is very critical, right? Like if you think this is a problem that you can kick the can in the future, you can't. Because if you think about the most successful companies, especially during such paradigm shifts, so AI is a massive paradigm shift. These paradigm shifts brings in initial phase of chaos, then that leads to a transition phase, and that leads to a growth phase. The successful companies are the one who focuses on transition during the chaos phase, because when transition actually happens, they will be in growth phase when others are struggling to transition, right? So agreeing to that and acting now is important on the scarcity, right? So now coming back to the scarcity problem. See, what got me excited come back to Revature is because of this real scarcity. It's a real scarcity, right? So the forward deployed engineer concept is in existence for the last 10 years or 15 years. It's not new. It's there. AI just made it practically possible. But I will give you some examples. Some companies are charging $1 million per developer per project, and the project can happen in few months. And I just learned, I'm not going to quote this company's name, they are charging $2.5 million per developer. How can you hire 100 of them, like 1,000 of it? It's impossible for you to hire your way through that. That's how scary the scarcity is, right? And you can't hire such expensive people. So you need to have and find alternate mechanisms to affordable. I call this as you should have a model where you should have a model which is accessible to hire forward deployed engineers, affordable for you to hire, and also make it friendly, affable. So have a model which is accessible, affordable, and affable. So that is the best way you can create it. Build a model that works for you to solve the scarcity problem.
What I would love to share with you, and I don't know if you saw our AI progression model in HR learning, and we, basically what you were saying, the different levels of maturity or levels of challenges and resets that organizations have to go through to be able to start to think about or be more strategic around using and leveraging AI. And in really that first phase, they're reactive and they're just kind of reacting to some of these challenges. And we've seen over the last couple of years, they've had a hard time being able to implement AI effectively, right, and efficiently. And one is because their teams don't have the skills, or their leaders don't have the skills and understanding of how to develop it, how to use it, and also the risk that's involved with it based on their industry and their organization. So having more leaders that at this level that are prepared to help the organization go through this level of optimization through our progression model is necessary. It's not a couple of years ago when AI has been around for a while, but generative AI and all these tools that support it, started evolving rapidly over the last couple of years. And I think now, as exciting as it is, it's still confusing the market a lot. It's still confusing organizations. We have a lot of conversations with our clients that are just starting to implement Copilot as their first kind of line of defense to be able to be prepared for this. But as you know, that's not enough, right? So
You're right, and you're exactly right, Rachel. See, it is definitely not enough. See, one thing which I want to convey is AI is confusing because this technology is a very, very advanced technology. It's godlike technology. There's no doubt in it. It is okay to be confused. It is okay even if you don't understand it. It's absolutely fine. I think it's good to be practical and get help on a need basis. We don't have to worry that we don't understand it. We don't have to worry that like it's confusing, or we don't have to pretend that we know everything. Because what's happening is there is an AI knowledge syndrome that is spreading across in the industry. People are reading a lot, hearing a lot, very tiny thin layers spread across, and they are just extrapolating that knowledge throughout the depth and making assumptions. Please don't do that. I think being practical of your understanding and not being in denial and accepting that certain things you don't get it, that's perfectly fine, and get help on your need basis. That's the way it is, because this is not a normal technology that everybody will get it. Some might not get it ever. That's okay. But getting help is key here, actually.
can you talk a little bit about client proximity as a core competency?
So for it is right. It is definitely client proximity, and that's the term forward. Literally means that forward deployed engineers mean forward deployed means you're literally deployed with the client. You are one-on-one aligned with the client. That's the key, right? So in a typical software development life cycle, these are the phases that happens before you build an application. You do a planning phase. You decide what and everything, how you're going to do that. Then you define this application. That's when the requirements of this application, the business functionalities, everything gets documented. Then you design the application. Then you develop. A developer comes in stage 4. That's when the developer comes in, and there is a high chance they might not even meet the client. But if the developer is going to create the application, why do you have to wait for stage 4 and sometimes not even meet the client? Make them available with the client. Let the client directly tell the developer what they want, how to solution it. Let the developer go and give feedback immediately. Hey, this is what my understanding is. You told me 10 things, 8 is great, but can you change 2 of them? I'm giving them a solution, and why. That interaction, working with them hand in hand, is critical. So forward deployed engineers is completely redefining the traditional software development lifecycle. It is literally left shifting from phase 4 to phase 1. That's how critical it is. And if you are not deployed them in front of client, they cannot be a genuine forward deployed engineer, actually.
And I guess more around the communication skills, how is that changing? Because I know that has been sometimes a challenge or a gap between the business and the engineer, and being able to communicate more effectively. And so you have that middle project manager that can speak to both sides of it, which again, I think it's good in some ways, but then also as it does delay the development, because some of the information does not always get transferred perhaps or understood on both sides, so you still have to go back and forth even more. How do you see the communication side being addressed for FDEs?
So this is a very good point, right? So if you think about it, Rachel, not everybody can become FDE. Let's say that we have 30 million developers in the world. If you assume all 30 million can be morphing into FDE, it's not going to be possible, right? The challenges lies not on their technical ability. The challenges lie on two things. One is mindset, okay? Thinking like an FDE, not thinking like a developer, because business solutioning is the number one important thing rather than focusing on programming, right? So people to get that mindset is tough. But the second biggest challenge is communication. You should be able to communicate with people around you. So pre-AI world, a developer should just know how to do technology. In a post AI world, that's just 50% of the work. The 50% of the work is knowing how to do technology. The other 50% of the work is how to talk technology. So communication is a core element of a forward deployed engineer. And I'm not saying it is impossible. Not everybody are great communicators, but do not take that for granted or do not ignore it or do not try to hide away from it. Take it head on, enhance your communication skills, understand what is the best way to communicate with your clients or your business owners. I think that is very critical. If you don't do that, you will still be a developer or a software engineer. You will never be a forward deployed engineer.
And then if you consider the other side of it, and what we're also saying to HR leaders or learning leaders or business leaders is that those that are not using AI are going to be left behind. And so not necessarily their roles will be replaced, but they also need to kind of, if they're not technology proficient or, their level of being able to work with it and understand it needs to also elevate. And so it's kind of on both sides. Like, a business leader in the past did not have to be as technology savvy. They had teams that, did the work. And to some extent, not saying that they have to be an engineer, but I think their level of understanding will make them a better leader.
Without a doubt, I think understanding is everybody should take an attempt to understand this because the fact that you mentioned and which everybody talks about, I'm going to repeat it, right? AI is not going to replace human beings, but human beings with AI is going to replace human beings without AI. It's simple, right? Think through it. The question is the way people measure is, do I have an exposure score of my job getting affected by AI? Or do I have a friction score? My job will not get affected by AI. A simple yardstick for you to measure is there an exposure score if your job has a high exposure score or a high friction score is. Think about in COVID. People who are able to successfully work remotely without any hassles, just assume that you have a high risk of your job getting exposed to AI. People who cannot work remotely, they have a very high friction score. AI cannot replace them. That's the yardstick. It doesn't mean that people who all work remotely are going to be replaced. No, it's not possible, right? But there's a possibility. Understand that. If you belong to that category, you should understand in what ways AI can take over the simple automated things that I can do. And how do I partner with AI? Don't ever try to compete with AI. Everybody should think, what is the best way I can partner with AI so that AI can make me look good? AI can successfully help me in my career or grow up in your career. That understanding of partnership, what are the nuances that will make this partnership great, is what everybody should think and try to elevate. To do that, you're right. They should understand it, at least within their job scope, and they should understand it, how to communicate their understanding to their peers or to the forward deployed engineers. That is quite critical, actually.
And looking at developing for this role for FDEs or hiring outside of your organization, and you mentioned before, not everyone can be an FDE, that's an engineer. So just like any particular field, you have different levels in that field and different people that have capabilities that will excel in different ways. So what's your advice for organizations that are looking at this next type of capability?
So again, this is a fundamental question every HR leader should be thinking and asking. I'll give you a story. Last week, I talked to this particular executive, HR executive, and they were like, I have the best FDE hunters in my team. I like the term that they used, but then I was realizing, like, if you start hunting for a really rare animal, you're going to hunt it down to extinction. Like, hunting and gathering did not help or advance human beings, right? What helped the civilization is farming. Okay. So I think the strategy, you can hunt for a short period of time or a necessity, but what will help you is your ability to farm. Take a good stack of your existing resources, and not everybody will be forward deployed. Do not try to boil the ocean. Don't try to convert everybody into forward deployed engineers, but try to bucket your people into three categories. And there are plenty of solutions. Even Revature has fantastic options to identify that. Bucket them into three different solutions. First bucket is people who are almost there, people who are almost forward deployed engineers. Identify them, quick wins, and give them the quick tools to make them into FDEs. The second bucket is people who will take months, 1 month, 2 months, or whatever it takes, but they can become, given the right support, given the right time, they can become forward deployed engineers. Yes, and start a transition phase for them. The third bucket is sadly, they can't become it. It's okay to agree it, and it is because by trying to do everything, you are going to degrade the progress of the first two buckets. So just categorize them into these three buckets and prioritize what to do with each one of those buckets. That would be my practical approach to solve this scarcity problem. If you think hunting is going to be your best way, your ability to recruit your way, you can't do that. You're going to drive FDs into extinction, right? So farming should be your focus.
I love that analogy, farming and hunting in this particular environment, to really think about it. That's, I'm gonna quote you if you don't mind on that part.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And as we wrap up our conversation today, what are, if you would like to share a little bit about your approach at Reviture in developing and deploying talent or technology talent for more than quite some time now. Can you talk a little bit about your approach here and just sum it up for those that are interested in learning more?
Ravature has been doing this for the last 20 years, right? So we have been partnering with great organizations, with great HR professionals, leaders to hire the best in class talent who are their FTEs. But I think that's what we have been doing. On top of it, we are also been helping organizations to transition their workforce from where they are to what is required in today's industry. These are the two things. That we give you the best in class talent. We also provide you very good transition mechanism for it, right? So we have been doing this for 20 years. We are the leader in both the space. What makes it more exciting for us now is I think the world is going to require this talent and require the transition of your existing workforce like no other. We are equipped, and the one of the biggest advantage we have is we are a very adaptable company, right? We never assumed that our entire mechanisms that got us here is going to help us in the world of AI. The foundation, we took the foundation as the basis, and we also redefined certain things. For example, we created our own taxonomy in this AI world. We created our own like a training pedagogy. I'll start with the pedagogy, right? We created flip the classroom pedagogy. What it means is in AI, things are changing at a crazy pace. So we don't teach theory anymore, nothing. We just teach how to do the work using AI, because the moment we start teaching theory, in 2 months it's going to become irrelevant. So by flipping the classroom, we are teaching coding and self-learn theory on a need basis. So in essence, we are creating learners who learn to learn. That's the model that we are doing it. And by doing this model, right, and we are seeing some phenomenal success, phenomenal outcome coming, and we still have a long way to go. But one thing is we are also coming in as a support, as an educationalist, as a consultant for HR professionals, because I'm a firm believer where AI is not just I think it's a huge opportunity for all of us. Do not see the negatives of an AI. That's going to happen. Whether you try, you cannot stop it. It's impossible to stop it. But see the opportunities for it. Every business has an opportunity. If you use the opportunity, it's going to be fantastic. Eat that and that. The best advice I give the leaders that I work with is don't wait out the chaos phase. Start the transition phase now. You have 2 years where this chaos phase is going to happen, then the transition starts. This is the time for you to figure out how to transition, have a model for it. Because when the whole industry, your competition is trying to transition, you will be on a growth phase and you're going to put your company at a massive advantage. So, how to do that? Have a proper strategy to recruit forward deployed engineers or similar AI talent. Also, have a proper model to transform your existing people into the world of AI. That would be my simple advice. And I'm excited that Reviture, with our past experience and what we are doing now, we are extremely geared up for it. Time will tell. I hope, like when we do our next podcast, I'll be glad to share our progress that we have made in this.
I'm excited about what you're doing, and hopefully we have the opportunity for you to revisit our events in the future here, because I think you would make for a great sponsor to really go beyond theory and show what people can do and how they can apply it, and at the level of speed that they need to be able to support their organizations in a forward. And as we look and think about F1, how the drivers, how they're prepared to be able to excel at the level of speed, but being able to be prepared for it so that it is safe and they're able to win, right? And to help their organizations perform at their most best.
Absolutely. More than happy to be part of it. And thanks a lot for having me. I think this is exciting conversation. Everybody should talk about it. And one thing that reminds me, which I would like to share as my final note, is Victor Hugo, the great French player, writer. He mentioned this. This has always been my guiding force. Greater than the power of mighty armies is an idea whose time has come. This is the time of AI. I think we should believe in it. We should embrace it. Do not compete with it. Do not block it. Make AI as your partner. And if you do that, you will get the best return from this partner. And you can literally be the first one to grab the opportunity that AI is going to present to the world.
Well said. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you for sharing your perspective. And thank you all for listening in, and look forward to future conversations.
Absolutely, Rachel. Thank you once again for having me here.
Thank you.